In the lively and colorful city of Okunda, where music fills the air and people still believe in love, a beautiful wedding brought the whole neighborhood together. Sefiu, a rising entrepreneur known for his charm and ambition, had finally chosen his bride Nia, a humble schoolteacher with a soft voice, a gentle heart, and a smile that could calm any storm. Nia wasn't rich or flashy, but everyone admired her. She respected traditions, treated elders with kindness, and taught children with so much patience. When Sefiu proposed, it felt like a fairy tale. People whispered that Nia must have a special grace to win the heart of a man like him. Their wedding day was something out of a dream. Women wore bright Ankara prints, men danced in flowing agbatas, and drums echoed through the streets of Okunda. Laughter and joy filled the air as Nia walked in, glowing like the morning sun. Sefiu looked proud, holding her hand like he'd won the biggest prize in the world. Their parents blessed them, friends danced till nightfall, and even strangers smiled. That day, everyone believed in happy endings. No one knew what storms were waiting ahead. But in that moment, it felt like nothing could break them apart. Not long after the wedding, everything started to change, quietly at first. Nia, full of joy and hope, found out she was pregnant. She thought Sefiu would be over the moon. And at first he was. He smiled, kissed her forehead, and told her, "You'll be an amazing mother." But those sweet words didn't last. Just a few weeks later, he started coming home late. At first he said he was busy with work, that he had meetings, or that traffic was too much. Nia believed him. She waited for him with warm food and a tired smile, rubbing her growing belly, hoping he'd come in with a kiss or a kind word. But the kisses stopped. The kind words disappeared. Sefiu became cold. He started picking fights over little things. Why the soup had too much pepper, why she didn't greet him with more energy, why she was resting too much. "Pregnancy is not a sickness," he'd snap. "You've become lazy. Always sleeping. Always complaining. You're too clingy, Nia." And every time he said those words, they cut her a little deeper. She tried to stay calm, tried not to cry. She told herself it was stress. Maybe work was pressuring him. Maybe it was just a phase. But nights became longer and lonelier. Sefiu would walk past her like she wasn't there. No more asking about the baby, no more rubbing her feet like he used to. Just silence, distance, and doors closing softly behind him. Nia tried to hold on to the man she married, but it felt like he was slipping away, one cold word at a time. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt like a stranger's home. And Nia, once full of joy and dreams, began to wonder if the love they shared had already died, before their child was even born. One quiet night, while the city of Okunda slept and the stars blinked gently above, Nia lay in bed half awake. The baby in her belly gave a small kick, and she smiled softly, placing her hand over the bump. But then she heard something. A soft voice in the hallway. It was Sefiu. He was on the phone, speaking in a low, gentle tone she hadn't heard in months. Curious and with a heavy heart, Nia slowly sat up and listened. His words felt like knives. "Of course I miss you," he said. "She's not the same, always tired, always nagging. I don't even recognize her anymore." Nia's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe she misheard. But then came the laugh, that sweet, teasing laugh he used to share with her, now being given to someone else. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She just sat there, frozen, feeling something deep inside her break. When he returned to the room, she closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. He crawled into bed beside her, not knowing she had heard everything. That night, Nia felt truly alone. But she said nothing. She held on to hope like a fragile thread. Maybe the baby would change things. Maybe once he saw their child, he'd remember the love they had. She convinced herself this was just a bad season, a storm they could survive. As the days passed, her belly grew round and beautiful. Strangers smiled at her on the street. Market women touched her shoulder and blessed her. But the one person she longed for, Sefiu, grew colder by the day. He rarely looked at her. He barely spoke. Sometimes he didn't come home at all. Nia started talking to her baby at night. "You're the only light I have now," she whispered. "Maybe when you arrive, your father will come back to us." But deep down, in a quiet place in her soul, she feared something precious was already gone. His love, once so warm, was now just a shadow, fading more and more with each passing day. It was a cold, silent night in Okunda, and Nia couldn't sleep. The baby was restless, and so was her heart. Sephew had come home late again, smelling of perfume and bitterness. She had waited with warm food, but he pushed the plate aside like it was nothing. "I'm not hungry," he snapped. Nia, tired and swollen, quietly said, "You never eat with me anymore." That one small sentence lit the fire. Sephew exploded. He stood up, eyes burning with rage. "You're useless," he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. "Just a fat burden. All you do is eat and complain." Nia's lips trembled. She tried to explain to calm him down. "I'm doing my best, Sephew. I'm carrying your child." But he didn't care. Something inside him had turned to stone. Then came the worst moment of her life. Without warning, he grabbed her by the arm, his grip tight and cruel. "Get out," he barked. Nia, barefoot, still in her nightdress, stumbled as he dragged her to the door. "Sephew, please. It's midnight, where will I go?" she cried, tears running down her face. But he didn't listen. He opened the door and pushed her out like she was garbage. Then with a loud final slam, he locked it behind her. The cold night air hit her skin like a slap. Her feet touched the bare ground, rough and cold. She looked around the dark street, her heart racing, her hands on her belly as if to protect her baby from the cruelty of the world. Tears flowed freely now, mixing with the dust on her face. She stood there alone, shocked, shivering and heartbroken. The man she had loved, the father of her unborn child, had turned into a stranger. And now, in the middle of the night, with no shoes, no bag, and nowhere to go, Nia realized the truth. She had been thrown away like she meant nothing. But in that moment of pain, something inside her whispered, "This is not the end." Nia walked through the quiet streets of Okunda with tears streaming down her face, her arms wrapped tightly around her belly. The city that once felt like home now felt cold and unfamiliar. She had nothing with her. Just a small handbag holding a few clothes, a cracked phone, and her antenatal card. No shoes. No place to go. Her heart felt heavier than her swollen feet. She walked slowly, stopping now and then to wipe her tears, hoping someone would see her and ask, "Are you okay?" But no one did. People passed by, too busy or too tired to notice the broken woman walking through the night. Morning came and the sun rose without warmth. Nia sat on a bench near a dusty roadside stall, her body aching, her baby kicking softly inside her. That's when she met Mama Shari, a soft-spoken elderly woman with kind eyes and a faded wrapper tied around her waist. She sold roasted groundnuts and mangoes by the roadside. When she saw Nia sitting there lost and weak, she walked over and gently said, "My daughter, are you all right?" Nia couldn't hold it in anymore. She burst into tears. Through sobs, she told Mama Shari her story. How her husband threw her out, how she had nowhere to go, how the baby was due soon. Mama Shari didn't ask too many questions. She simply held Nia's hand and said, "Come with me. You're not alone anymore." They traveled for hours to a quiet village called Lamora, where the air was calm and life moved slowly. Mama Shari's home was small, with cracked walls and a tin roof, but it was full of warmth. She gave Nia a room with a soft mat and clean sheets. She cooked for her, rubbed her feet, and spoke to her like a mother would. In that little house in Lamora, Nia finally found peace. Not riches, not luxury, but something better. Safety, kindness, and a reason to keep going. The road had been lonely, but now Nia wasn't walking it alone. Weeks passed in Lamora, and Nia slowly began to breathe again. With Mama Shari by her side, she felt a kind of love she hadn't known in a long time. A mother's love, simple and pure. The villagers were kind too. Some would bring her fruit, others would greet her warmly in the mornings. And though the pain of being abandoned still sat deep in her heart, the peace of Lamora helped her heal, little by little. Then one early morning, just as the sun was rising and birds were singing softly outside, Nia felt the first wave of pain. Her baby was coming. Mama Shari held her hand tightly, speaking calm words, wiping her forehead and praying over her. The hours were long, the pain was sharp, but Nia kept whispering, "I can do this. For you, my child." Finally, with tears in her eyes and sweat on her face, she brought a baby boy into the world. He had strong lungs and a loud cry, but the moment she held him in her arms, everything changed. The pain disappeared. The fear melted away. She named him Jabari, which means brave one. Looking into his tiny eyes, she whispered, "You saved me." Life wasn't easy after that, but it was full of meaning. Nia began to work with her hands, something she had learned from her mother years ago. She started weaving baskets and sewing simple dresses. Mama Shari helped her sell them at the local market. Slowly, her skills began to draw attention. People came from nearby villages just to buy her work. She didn't make much at first, but every coin felt like a victory. With Jabari strapped to her back and thread in her hands, Nia worked every day with quiet strength. She had no husband, no fancy house, no gold, but she had her son, her dignity, and a growing dream. The girl who was once thrown out barefoot and pregnant was now becoming something else entirely. A mother, a provider, a woman rising from the ashes. Life in Lamora slowly turned into something beautiful for Nia. What began with pain and heartbreak was now blooming into purpose. She woke up early each morning, tied Jabari to her back with a colorful wrapper, and sat by the window sewing dresses or weaving baskets. Her hands worked with focus, but her heart was full of hope. People in the village started noticing her talent. Her clothes were simple, but they carried a quiet beauty, just like her. One day, a kind woman from the nearby women's cooperative stopped by her stall. She had heard about the quiet mother with gifted hands. "Come join us," she said. "We're building something bigger together." Nia was nervous. She wasn't used to leading or speaking in front of others. But Mama Shari smiled and said, "You don't just make clothes, Nia. You make courage." So Nia joined. The cooperative was filled with women who had faced hard lives. Widows, young mothers, and women abandoned just like her. Slowly, Nia started sharing her skills. She showed them how to sew neatly, how to make patterns, how to price their work. But more than that, she shared her story. She told them how she was thrown out while pregnant, how she found help, how she built something from nothing. Her honesty gave others the courage to try again. Before long, the women started calling her Mother Light. At first, Nia laughed and blushed when they said it, but deep inside it touched her. They said she brought light into dark places, hope into broken hearts. The name spread beyond the cooperative. People in Lamora, and even visitors from nearby villages, would ask for her by that name. Her little stall grew into a small workshop. The women she taught began earning their own money, feeding their children, holding their heads high. Nia watched it all with wonder. The woman who once had nothing now gave everything. Not just clothes but healing. Not just baskets but dignity. And as Jabari grew, he saw not just a mother, but a light that refused to go. Back in the noisy, fast-paced city of Okunda, life had moved on. Sefiu was still chasing money, parties, and new faces. He barely thought of Nia anymore. Until one afternoon at a car wash, a visiting trader from Lamora started talking. "There's this woman in our village," the trader said casually, sipping a soda. "She's strong, famous now, teaches sewing and business to women. They call her Mother Light. Looks just like your wife. What was her name again?" "Nia, right?" Sefiu laughed out loud. "Nia? From Lamora? Please. That village life probably finished her." He brushed it off like a bad joke and went back to scrolling through his phone. But later that night, while lounging at a lounge bar, something strange happened. He was lazily checking social media when a flyer popped up in a friend's story. It was an advert for a women's empowerment seminar in Okunda. The guest speaker was a woman in bold red and gold Ankara attire, standing tall, smiling with confidence. Sefiu's heart stopped. He zoomed in on the picture. The face was familiar, too familiar. It was Nia. But not the Nia he remembered. This Nia looked powerful. Her eyes sparkled. Her posture was strong. She wasn't just surviving, she was glowing. The flyer read, "Hosted by Nia Kabila, founder of the New Moon Foundation, also known as Mother Light." Sefiu stared at the screen, stunned. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, regret. Deep burning regret. He remembered the night he threw her out barefoot, angry and blind. And now here she was, rising, leading, shining in a way he never imagined. The gossips in Okunda started whispering too. "Did you see her photo? That's Sefiu's ex-wife, right? She's a queen now." Sefiu couldn't escape it. Her name was everywhere, on lips, on flyers, on the radio. The woman he discarded had become someone the whole city admired. And for the first time, Sefiu began to realize, maybe he had thrown away something priceless. Sefiu's smooth life in Okunda began to fall apart faster than he could understand. The new woman he had left Nia for, pretty, flashy, full of drama, was nothing like the calm, soft-hearted wife he once had. First, everything felt exciting. Late nights, expensive gifts, fancy restaurants. But soon the cracks began to show. She was always complaining, always demanding more. One night, after a loud fight, she packed her things and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Sephew didn't stop her. He just sat there in silence, staring at the wall. Days later, more trouble came knocking. His once thriving business was suddenly under investigation. There were whispers of unpaid taxes, shady deals he had ignored, and people he trusted turning their backs. He brushed it off, thinking it would blow over. But it didn't. One evening, tired and drained, he walked into his apartment. The fridge was empty. No food, not even water. He reached for his phone to order takeout, but the payment failed. Confused, he opened his banking app and froze. His account was locked. A red notice flashed on the screen. Frozen due to fraud investigation. Sephew sank into the couch, heart pounding. Everything he built gone. The money, the love, the peace, all gone. And that's when the regret hit him. Like a heavy wave crashing over his chest. He remembered Nia's quiet ways, her simple meals, her warm hands on his back after a long day. He remembered the day he screamed at her, the night he threw her out barefoot and pregnant. He remembered ignoring her tears and choosing pride over kindness. Now, sitting alone in the dark with no food, no money, and no one to call, Sephew felt the full weight of what he had lost. Nia was no longer waiting for him. She had moved on, grown stronger, become someone the whole country admired. And he was just a man who once had a diamond, and carelessly threw it into the dirt. A few weeks later, while Sephew was still trying to piece his life back together, an envelope arrived at his apartment. It was hand-delivered by a young courier who smiled and said, "You've been invited to something important, sir." Sephew, confused but curious, opened it slowly. The paper was thick and elegant, decorated with golden borders. His eyes scanned the words. "You are cordially invited to the National Women's Empowerment Conference, to be held in Okunda City Hall. Special guest of honor, Nia Kabila, founder of the New Moon Foundation, also known as Mother Light." Sephew dropped the invitation. His heart skipped. For a moment he thought it was a mistake. Nia? His Nia? The same woman he once dragged out of their house in the middle of the night? The same woman he had forgotten, ignored, and replaced? He picked up the card again and stared at her name. Nia Kabila. It sounded so powerful now, so far from the woman he once saw as weak. Memories came flooding back. Her laughter, her patience, her quiet prayers at night. And then the screaming. The door slam. Her barefoot figure fading into the dark. He covered his face with his hands. He thought she would disappear after that night. He thought she would break. But now, here she was, rising like the morning sun, leading women across the country, building something from the same pain he caused. The same woman he had called useless was now changing lives and being honored for it. Sephew felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, shame, sadness. Deep inside, something whispered, you didn't just lose her. You lost the best part of yourself when you let her go. The event was in 2 days. He didn't know if he had the courage to attend, but one thing was clear. The world was now seeing what he failed to see. Nia was no longer just his ex-wife. She was a voice, a force, a queen who rose from the ashes he left her in. The grand hall in Okunda City was packed with people. Bright lights, camera flashes, and the sound of excited chatter filled the air. Women from all over the country had gathered, dressed in beautiful African prints, their faces glowing with pride and hope. At the very back of the room, Sephew sat quietly, almost invisible. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited, not sure if he was ready to see her again. He clutched the invitation in his hand like it might somehow protect him from the shame he carried. Then the announcer stepped up and spoke into the mic. "Please welcome our guest of honor, founder of the New Moon Foundation, a voice of strength and healing, Mother Light, Nia Kabila." The room erupted into applause. And there she was. Nia stepped onto the stage, dressed in dazzling red and gold ankara, her head held high, her skin glowing, and in her arms was a little boy Jabari. The crowd stood to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. She smiled gently, waving to the audience, her son resting peacefully against her shoulder. Sephew felt his breath catch. He stared, frozen, as if the earth had stopped turning. That was Nia, but not the quiet, unsure girl he once knew. This woman was powerful, graceful, unshaken. She held herself like a queen, full of quiet fire. The same woman he had once called a burden now stood in front of hundreds of people who adored her. As she began to speak, her voice was calm and steady. There was a time I was thrown out with nothing, not even shoes on my feet. But I wasn't empty. I carried purpose inside me. I just didn't know it yet. The room went silent, hanging on her every word. Sefiu's eyes welled with tears, but he wiped them quickly. Regret washed over him like a wave. He had thrown her away, not knowing she was gold. And now, sitting in the back row, surrounded by applause that wasn't his, he watched her shine like he never let her. After the event, the hall slowly emptied. Women hugged each other, took photos, and talked excitedly about Nia's powerful words. Some stood in line just to shake her hand. Sefiu stood at a distance, frozen in place, his heart pounding louder than the drums that had played earlier. He didn't know what he would say. He just knew he had to speak to her. Somehow, when the crowd around her began to thin, he walked forward. Slow steps, shaky hands, heart full of regret. He hadn't seen her this close in over a year. Nia turned and saw him. For a second, her face didn't change. Calm, unmoved. But her eyes, deep and steady, met his, and he knew she remembered everything. He cleared his throat, but his voice came out low and broken. Nia, I was wrong. I messed up. I didn't see your worth until it was too late. Please, let's fix this. Let me try again. For a moment, silence hung between them like a heavy curtain. Then Nia spoke softly but with power. You threw away diamonds, Sefiu, she said, her voice as steady as her heart. And now, I sparkle on my own. Sefiu looked down, ashamed. He wanted to beg, to explain, to turn back time. But there was no going back. The woman in front of him wasn't the one he threw out barefoot and pregnant. She was stronger now. Whole. Complete. And she didn't need him to shine. I'm not angry anymore, Nia added gently. But I won't go back to a cage I escaped from. I found myself, Sefiu. I found my light. Her words were kind but final. She picked up Jabari, smiled politely, and walked away with grace in every step. Sefiu stood there, alone, surrounded by echoes of applause that weren't for him. And as Nia disappeared into the crowd, he realized something painful but true. Sometimes, when you break someone, they don't come back smaller. They come back brighter. A few days after the event, Sefiu couldn't sleep. Nia's words kept ringing in his ears. You threw away diamonds, now I sparkle on my own. But more than that, the image of little Jabari stayed with him. His son. The boy he had never held, never fed, never even looked into the eyes. Regret weighed on him like a mountain. So he swallowed his pride and reached out. Nia agreed to meet him, but not alone. They sat outside a quiet cafe in Lamora, with Mama Shari nearby, watching like a protective lioness. Sefiu sat nervously, fingers twisting in his lap. Then Nia arrived, walking with confidence, Jabari on her hip, curious eyes peeking out from under a little cap. Sefiu's breath caught. He looks like me, he whispered. Yes, Nia replied calmly. But I pray he doesn't become you. He looked up at her, eyes pleading. Please, let me be a part of his life. I know I don't deserve it, but he's my son. Nia was quiet for a moment, then slowly nodded. You can see him. He deserves to know where he came from. But listen carefully, Sefiu. This child will know truth, not confusion. He will know strength, not sorrow. If you come into his life, it won't be to play games. No empty promises. No pain. Sefiu nodded quickly, tears in his eyes. I understand. I just want a chance. She looked him dead in the eye. One mistake, one lie, and that door closes forever. There was no hate in her voice, only firm love. The kind that protected more than it punished. She let him hold Jabari for the first time. The boy looked up at him curiously, then smiled. Sefiu's heart cracked open. For a few minutes he felt the warmth of something pure, something he almost destroyed. But when he handed Jabari back, he also handed back control. Nia was no longer a woman he could hurt. She was a mother now, a protector, a warrior. And Sefiu knew. He was no longer the one in charge of this story, she was. News of Nia's journey spread like wildfire. It started with a photo from the women's event in Okunda. Her in bright red and gold, holding Jabari, standing tall like royalty. The image went viral. People wanted to know who she was, where she came from, and how she became Mother Light. Soon journalists came knocking. Her name appeared in newspapers, her voice echoed through radio stations, and her story began to inspire thousands. One morning, Nia sat in a small radio studio in Lamora, microphone in front of her, heart steady. The host asked, "Nia, what gave you the strength to rise after everything you went through?" She smiled gently and replied, "They kicked me out pregnant, but I came back with purpose." Those words hit people deeply. The phones rang nonstop. Women called in crying. Some said, "I was abandoned too." Others whispered, "You gave me hope." Nia didn't speak like a victim. She spoke like a survivor, a woman who turned pain into power. Her story was printed in bold headlines. From shame to strength. Meet Nia Kabila, the woman who refused to stay broken. Schools invited her to speak. Churches asked her to share her journey. Even government officials requested her advice on supporting single mothers. But Nia never let it go to her head. She still walked through Lamora's dusty streets, still carried Jabari on her back, still helped the women in her sewing group. She stayed true to her roots, to Mama Shari, and to the women who stood beside her when no one else did. People who once whispered behind her back now spoke her name with pride. The same village that once would have pitted her now protected her. And Sephew, watching it all from a distance, realized the truth. Nia had become everything he said she'd never be. The woman they doubted was now the woman everyone admired. And as Nia looked at her reflection one morning, she didn't see pain or shame anymore. She saw purpose, power, and proof that even when the world turns its back on you, you can S. The sun was setting behind the New Moon Foundation building, casting a soft golden glow over the village of Lamora. Nia stood at the front, holding Jabari on her hip, surrounded by women whose lives had been changed by her courage, widows, single mothers, young girls who once had no hope. Some carried sewing kits, others held baskets they had woven. There was laughter in the air, music in the background, and the smell of home-cooked food drifting from a nearby fire. Nia looked around, eyes full of quiet pride. The pain she once carried had not disappeared. It had simply been transformed into something powerful, something beautiful. As the camera pulled back, her voice came in soft and sure. "They said broken things can't shine. That once you're tossed away, your light fades forever. But look at me now. I'm the proof that healing glows." She smiled gently at Jabari, who giggled and reached for her necklace, the one Mama Shari had given her the day he was born. Around her, the women clapped and sang a joyful melody. Some danced barefoot in the red dust. Others held hands and whispered blessings. This was more than just a foundation. It was a family, a new beginning, a lighthouse for anyone who had ever felt unwanted, unloved, or unseen. And there, in the heart of Lamora, stood Nia. No longer the woman they kicked out, but the woman the world would never forget. Because when purpose is born from pain, it doesn't just shine. It lights the way for others.